Hello, everyone. Welcome. I think we're soon ready to start, Francis.
Yes, I would say we're in good time to do so. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. We've been ramping up, looking forward to um, supporting and really bringing safe sport conversations into the community sports sector here in Ottawa. And I know some of you may be not in Ottawa, but we're the Ottawa Sport Council. I'm Frances Mercer, and our real goal is to champion, educate, and connect community sport, and try our absolute best to problem solve, encourage, and educate and connect everybody together. We learn best from one another, and so to have this opportunity today, to bring everyone together, really around safe sport in community sport. And really, really big thanks for everyone to take their time, and especially for Francis from Coaching Association of Canada, who is going to lead us through the presentation today, the webinar. We got lots of opportunity for connection and questions, and just to provide a land acknowledgement for today, from coast to coast. We respect and acknowledge the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people as the keepers of the territory upon which we will be learning today. I am honored to join you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the territory where you are located and commit to reconciliation meaningfully throughout the whole year and while completing your valuable work. So thank you so much, and I'll pass the microphone over to Francis.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour. I am bilingual, but the presentation will be in English today. So thank you, Francis. And it's pretty awesome to see another name like mine. I can say growing up, I've rarely seen, I think it's on a hand, maybe two, three. I've met somebody with that same name, Francis. So I think we're well set up. So good for this webinar today. So yes, it is virtual. If you can to put your screens up, that would be great in terms of being able to see you. So it'd be nice to have that connection there. I welcome as much interaction. This is for you. So I appreciate the questions that you've answered for the registration. It tells me a bit more about yourself. And this is more about giving you an overview of some of the insights that I have and helping you navigate that as you go forward. So if we can go to the next slide. And I'm going to go start general. So we are aiming at club level. So I know that some of our participants are more knowledgeable on this, and you're working more on the provincial or on the national sport organizations. But again, just to be fair, we're looking at, the local level. I'll give a whole overview of what things are. And by the end of the presentation, there'll be lots of time for questions and even some scenarios. And I'm aiming to give you some tools and some resources, some things that you can actually take and you can actually action right away. So that's kind of what we're looking for. So here, the Coaching Association of Canada, hopefully you've heard of us in terms of CAC. And hopefully you've heard about the great work that we do in trying to help with the coach education, but also elevating like sport and the leadership in sport and looking at how we can help everybody create that safe environment where everybody loves to play sport. Because the ultimate goal is that we play sport and that we practice and that we're moving and we're active. Doesn't matter which level of sport you're at. It's good for our bodies, good for the skills, good for the mind. We want people to be enjoyable in sport. And so that is the main goal of it. And so here's our mission, here's our values in terms of what we do. And so part of my role here at the Coaching Association of Canada, I'm a manager of sport and safety. And so that means I look at overall lens of, the sport safety, and that includes safe sport. And I'll talk a little bit about differences in terms of those terms in a short bit. But I look at seeing what sport needs in terms of resources. So we don't have jurisdiction on coaches. So meaning I can't say to a basketball coach, you need to take this, or to a volleyball coach or whichever. So the sports associations have their own pathways and their own requirements. And so that's where the clubs, the provincial clubs, and then the national associations you have your own guidelines and going forward. And so it's kind of also why it's a little bit messy and how it's different for each section, the sports system. That's how it is. And so today we're looking at club level, and I'm going to show you some of the resources I've learned in this position and how we can make it. And also know that everything that we do is based on research. So this is not just Francis waking up one night and just saying, here, this is what I think is the best. So no, this is based on the research, on the experts that have done work in the field, tested and looked through. And unfortunately, especially on the safe sport side, it's taken the cases that have been abused and maltreatment, and then when you look at those lenses and say, what could have been done to prevent? This is some of these suggestions. So this is how it came about. And so I just want to give you like that whole overview that, this is tested, tried and true, and some of the basic frameworks that we can look at implementing. Next slide. So again, so about the CAC, we're known more for the NCCP, and so that's the pathways and that's the curriculums that we're helping each coaches and sports develop, and so we are the flagship of that. But on the smaller side of it, we're also looking at excellence. So that coaching excellence and that sport excellence, that's where we help and support clubs, governance, governance in the broad term, in terms of doing it, and safe sport is one of them that we're going to be looking at doing a bit more here. Let's move on to the next one. So all this to say that we are working with many partners. So we are partially funded from the Government of Canada and also from other grants that we do apply and go forward. And we work with our partnership. And so the partnership means, yes, the Canadian Olympic Committee, Paralympic Committee. It means Aboriginal Sport Cycle, Commonwealth Games, and then all of the national sport organizations, provincial and territorial sport organizations. So we work with all of you and trying to see what your needs are and try to tailor to how we can better information. So we're kind of that liaison. And that's why in this position, I have the unique role to be able to show you what I've learned that's done across Canada. So it's, again, I have been able to liaise with different organizations and see some of the best practices. Moving on. Sports safety. So there's different terms out there. And so raise your hand if you've heard sports safety before, apart from me saying it here in this presentation. So raise your hand just in terms of reaction button. Yeah. Okay. So there's one, two. Ooh, that's about it. Oh, three. Okay. So it's not as common, right? And so, and if I say safe sport, have you heard safe sport? Then raise your hand. Who has heard safe sport? Should be a whole lot more hands, right? Yeah, yeah, that's what I figured. See all the big explosions are just on the safe sport. Okay, so here's another term for you. Integrity in sport. Have you heard integrity in sport? A few, right? And especially since our partners, the Canadian Center for Ethics in Sports, changed their names to Sport Integrity, they've changed their roles a little bit. That's why we're hearing a little bit more. But if you're familiar, on the Quebec side, they're calling their safe sport program or their sport safety program Integrity in Sport, Intégrité dans le sport. And so again, looking at how we encompass everything. And so for here, like we here at CAC call it sport safety, and it's an umbrella term encompassing quite a few things because we're looking at the quality of the sport environment. We're not just talking about the neglect and the abuse and the maltreatment that we want to prevent. We're looking at the overall environment. And so that's why we say here, sports safety. And so if we continue to the next slide. So for us here, for sports safety, it means, the safe sport. It means a responsible coaching movement. That's a program that I'll be talking about. That means a professional coaching program, which is a certification that has different screenings and have different prerequisite there. The equity, diversity, inclusion, the accessibility. So that's where, we encompass this. Gender-based violence, mental health. What's missing in there is a concussion and some of the other things or safety, emergency planning, right? So those are things that's all part of what we say is sports safety because it's that overall environment. That's what we say. And so that's what kind of impacting on that side. Moving on to the next slide. But when we're talking about safe sport, it's more on just this aspect here. And so it's more in terms of on the prevention, it's more on the noticing and our awareness and taking action so that these don't happen within your sport environments. And so when we say safe sport, that's what it is. And when I was mentioning about integrity in sport, the term also is an umbrella term to do all of those, right? So it's not just, the safe sport, because safe sport is just limited to this. So if we want more than that, because we know that there's more that can affect the sport and the environment, and we want that quality sport environment. We know that we need more than just safe sport, and that's why you're hearing some terms of integrity in sport, intégrité dans le sport in terms of Quebec, and for us, we did the umbrella term of sports safety, and so that's again just that level playing field. I'm trying to make sure that everybody is aware on where we're at. And any questions so far? You can put them in the chat if ever you have any questions. I'm happy to be supported by Mikey and Francis here who can triage the chats. But if as we go, if you have a specific question, don't be shy in putting it in the chat, and then we'll continue on there. So until I see a question, I'll just keep moving along. But again, just recognizing that we're here for you. So if you have any questions, put them in, and then I'll see how I can keep supporting on that side. So here's a quick question for you. Power imbalance is presumed to exist where individuals, let's click one more, has authority or control over a person, is in a position to confer, grant, or deny the benefit or advancement of a person, is responsible for the physical or psychological well-being of the person. So for you, in the chat, which one do you think has power imbalance? So is it the 1, 2, 3? Which one do you think confers power imbalance? Let's see what those chat says. All three. All three. All three. See, this is a group that's aware a lot more than just their regular local sports that I've spoken to. And it's probably due to having the Ottawa Sport Cycle Council that's able to help you on that. Yes, it is, and it's all three. Keep clicking, please, Francis. So all three have a power imbalance. So yeah, definitely. And if you want to keep liking as we go, so that means for everybody in sport. It doesn't mean just for the coaches. So yes, the parents have an imbalance because they have a position that have a power in their coaches as well. Keep going. Volunteers, officials, judges, however you call it in your sport, right? And all have that as well. And so uh, thinking of that, we want you to bring you to this. So I hope that you are aware, and I saw from the registration that a lot of you are aware of this, but this is the main code of conduct that you can look at where it really stipulates what is acceptable and what is not acceptable in sport. Because the biggest challenge when I'm hearing past investigations that have gone through was determining, was it right or was it not right? Was it in your policy that you can't really do this? And why can you not do it? And so those are the kind of like that gray zone that existed. So with the Canadian sport, we have this. So this is the Universal Code of Conduct to prevent and address maltreatment in sport. So this is the main basis of the Code of Conduct. Now, does this apply only to coaches? In your opinion, does this apply only to coaches? Definitely not. No, all members in sport, right? And so if you have a power imbalance, if you have authority over whoever you're participating in, that means all of this. And so that means me in the leadership role, me in an admin role, have to abide by these code of conduct as well. And so hopefully, like I said, because of the registration here and the numbers here, I saw that most of you do know this, but hopefully you know it well. And then the other question is your sport aligned with it? So even if I'm not a provincial sport, even if I'm the local swim club here in my area, I can still align with these. And so that's clearly stating what there is. And I'll show you some tools that you can easily doing it. It doesn't mean that you need to change everything that you have. And that's the part of today is I want to show you that you're doing a lot of the things right now. And I'm just going to be showing you some things that you can maybe add on to it and that can be enhanced. And so first and foremost, this clearly states out what's acceptable and what is not acceptable in sport. And so in terms of behaviors. So this is a code of conduct that I encourage you to know well. and to align, and meaning that your club defines that this is the code of conduct that everybody abides to. So that's the one thing for sure. And I've got some links, and I didn't mention that earlier, but after this presentation, Francis will be sending you the presentation, so you'll have it on hand. And you'll also have all the links that I'm talking about today. So well, that's all going to be shareable and doable. And of course, if you have any questions on this or you want to connect, then please reach out because I'm able to do that as well. So good. Perfect. And so I'm going to add a link in the chat here. So this is one of the tools that we have. And there we go. So this is a checklist that we have that we created for the responsible coaching movement. And basically it audits your club in terms of what you have and what you've done. So here's the link here. It's available in French and English. And you're welcome to use it right now. So if you want to open it and just kind of take a look at it, I will disclose that there is some updates that's needed to this. And so it's moving quite fast in safe sport or sports safety or integrating sport, however you want to call it. It's moving quite quickly. So there's some parts that we need to add to this, but it's still a good basis to show and see what you already have and what you're doing. And so find those quick wins that you have. This is the first tool that you can start looking at doing and going forward. So if they're in the chat, I'll be in the email as well. I'll just keep moving along because again, this is one tool that you can use to see what you're already doing. You want to move to the next one? So the responsible coaching movement is a framework that was created in 2015. So 2015, if you remember, there was a lot of, or if you were aware, there was a lot of upset in the sports system from a lot of major cases coming out. So Sheldon Kennelly being one. So Alison Forsyth, some of the other ones, like just in terms of the abuse that's happened to athletes, coaches, and just a lot of actions and forward. And so the sports system as a whole in Canada came together and said, okay, this is not acceptable. We need to do something different. And so this is where CAC and at the time they were CCES, the Canadian Safe Sport and Ethics in Sports. We got together, we partnered, and we brought all the sports system together with the government, with some experts, and we kind of looked at, okay, so what can we do differently? So having learned from these abuse situations, what can be put in place that can prevent that can limit the options of having abuse in sport? And this is how this program was created. So this is what we call the responsible coaching movement. It's free, it's voluntary for sports are doing too, but it's based on three pillars. And it's the strength of the three pillars together that ensure that creates environments where abuse is going to be hard to do in because you've got different things in there. So I'm going to walk you through what those are. And again, I've got the links to that, but the responsible coaching movement is your basic standard framework that you can use to add some of that safe sport elements that we're looking for on top of a few other things. Moving on. So these are some of the tools. So some of the screenshots of the tools that we have here. Again, all the links that we have on our website that clearly outlines what we mean by that. And we're going to go a little bit more in depth with that, please. So next one. Rule of two. So I've often received some requests from people saying that they have questions on rule of two and whether it applies or does not apply. But they have no clue that it's part of the responsible coaching movement. And so again, when I mentioned that, if you're applying the rule of two, fantastic, but you're also applying the background screening and the ethics training. So those are all three together make that strength, right? So rule of two, basically the basis is me by myself with a person of authority. So could be anybody members. Like remember we talked about the person of authority earlier. So me with that person of authority, I'm putting myself in a position of risk. Me as an athlete, and that person of authority also is a position of risk by being alone with those individuals. And so this is where we say the rule of two, safety in numbers, that you're best to have. And so looking at every interactions that you have, whether it be written, virtual, face-to-face, seeing how you can be with people that are screened, ideally, that's the number one there, trained, screened, and that they're aware and to be part of that. And so there's some tools here for some communication. There's some tools for some travel guides, because those are the problem-solving things that we're going through. And this is one thing that when we look at past scenarios, having the rule and two in place helps limit the options of that risk. And so this is where we recommend that the club or the sport organization has a rule of two implemented, has a policy implemented for all of their interactions, and that all the members know of what that is. There's also a training for this, and so that Brett walks you through some scenarios because each sport is different. So I'll give you an example. If I'm a ski coach and I'm on the chairlift with my athlete, is that a rule of two? So where there's two of us, we're in an open environment, but we're on a chairlift. So is that a rule? Is Does that abide by the rule of two? The answer is it depends. It depends on the relationship. It depends on how long the length is. It depends on is the athlete aware of the rule of two? So there's really a repercussion, any chances there to be able to say something? Is there check-ins with the athlete? So again, it's that gray zone, and this is where like we're looking at, and there's some tools to help you on that and the training to walk you through some of the scenarios. Next one. Background screening. So we've heard about the vulnerable self checks. I'll ask you to put your question, Dave, in the chat, and then yes, I'll come up because I'm sure it has to do so with the rule of two, but for sure I'll touch on that just because I want to make sure that I'm about halfway through the presentation. I'll go further on that one. So background screening. So you've heard about the vulnerable sector check. You've heard about the background screening, the police record check. So yes, ideally, if you are working with a vulnerable sector, you want some of those checks. I understand that province per province, it's different, challenging on some. But the big thing here is having a check. So whatever check that you're able to do, better than having none at all. And so having it regularly. So that's up to you, the sport, to decide, is it every 2 years? Is it every 3 years? Is it every year? That's something that you can look at having, but having those checks is a big one. And then on top of that, we also ask that you do your references, that you also do role, responsibility, and expectations. So similar as in a job, as a coach coming in, as a volunteer coming in, I am clear what my role is. I am clear to what I can do and can't do. I am clear on what's expected of me, and it's written down. And so those helps, again, unmuddy the water and clear up a little bit more some of the expectations going forward. And so background screening is definitely one that we organize and we inform and help out. There's templates that you can use. There's all the different checks, examples in terms of when to use it and how to use it. And there's also a matrix in terms of if I'm a person that doesn't have interactions with athletes and participants, then do I need to have like the full blown security check? Maybe I just need just a basic one, right? And so again, all the tools are available here and easy to have. And then on to the next one. And then the other one is training. So that's the third pillar of the responsible coaching movement is yes, we want that rule of two. Yes, we want the screening, but you also need to know some of the training. And so, for example, when we're talking about the safe sport, do you have that awareness? Do you know what that means in terms of safe sport? Do you know what you would do in terms of those actions? And how can you set up yourselves? And so that would be one training that, we're recommending. Making ethical decisions. So there's been this big switch in terms of the sports system, where it is mandated to have the online making ethical decisions. Because as a coach, it's never just a black and white. There's a lot of those gray zones. And how do you see your role in terms of that a person has influence, a person that can make some decisions, but also without causing any harm. And so and just being able to help out the person that's there with you. And so those are the trainings that we recommend. And I'll share a little bit more on those. But again, some training better than no training. And then ideally, we want retention of our participants, right? And so we're helping them build them out. And so as sport organizations, because again, this is the sport club going it. This is not me as a coach just doing this. This is the club view of implementing these three pillars. But as a club view, I want to invest on the education and awareness. And so every year there's something else I can look at having. It's not all in one shot. Moving on to the next one. And so I talked about the safe sport training. So this is one that's available. It's free. There's a few versions out there. So there's Respecting Sport. There's this one. It all depends on the sport that you're working with and what they recommend. So here is what you'll see in terms of the acknowledgement that you understand what the rules are. It's the misuse of power, understanding the UCCMS, some of the awareness there. And then it's the knowing what the types of treatments are. It's knowing how maltreatment occurs in sports. So what are the situations that could happen? And then how can you identify when this happens? And then for sure, it's also looking at the actions, right? And so how do you prevent it? How do you report? And what is your duty report? How do you safeguard your participants? So this is all part of this training. That's about approximately an hour-ish, available French and English. And again, it's free, right? And so in the locker, that's available too. So that's one of them. But there's different models right now that are happening, again, because Salesport continues to grow as we move ahead. And then if you're working with kids, so if you're working with youth and you're working with kids, Commit to Kids for coaches is the other one that we also encourage. So it goes a little bit deeper than the Salesport training and talks a little bit more on terms of the kids side and helps you on that. And so if you are working with children, this is another one that we recommend. Again, it's free, something that you can go through. Sorry, they changed the prices, so it is $12 for this one. But they do have so this one is the half an hour model, which is a bit longer, but they now have a new one that's a 20-minute, just a more condensed version that is free. So you can still offer this to everybody. And moving on. A new resources I'm going to show you. So because we're looking at club implementation, club overview, this is a new module that was created that has a little bit more insight on the sports system. So if you want to understand how the Canadian sports system works, this is definitely one of the new modules that you can look at. And this is the toolkit that goes with it. And I'm showing it to you because it has a little bit more tools on the recruitment side, on the hiring side, and especially on the onboarding. You do this in the workplace, but in sports, we don't always do this. It's okay, here you're able to show up for being coach, and here's the list of participants, here's the field, equipment. Okay, here, go ahead and have fun, right? And so that happens a bit too often. And so we're looking at, how can we give some structure? How can we give some support and some knowledge to help them through? So this is, again, free templates that are available to you that you can use and continue on. So I've mentioned that part of the responsible coaching movement, part of my role is making sure that you have the updated resources, that you have some things that you can work with. And I'm really looking at not duplicating what's already out there. And that's what I'm seeing currently in this role. There's a lot of agencies working and doing different things. So I'm going to call out some of the things that we have, but I'm also going to show you some other things that we don't have and that you can have elsewhere. So again, this is just a quick view of our website, but on our website of Responsible Coaching Movement at CAC, French and English, we've got lots of sections and things that you can use and you can continue on there. So I'm looking at the time. I think we've got lots of time for that. So if you want to go back to the last one, and then I'll take some questions about the responsible coaching movement because I think they've had one question. And so if you have any questions on the RCM or any of the pillars, you can either put them in the chat or come off mute. We're looking at short and concise. If it's something that we want to work offline, we can definitely do that. So for example, I've had some calls with some sports just to kind of soundboard, right, in terms of how to do things differently for the unique situations. But I definitely am open to questions or comments right now.
I jump in here?
Yeah, yeah.
Francis, I put in the chat my question about the rule of two. So it applies to our soccer club because we're U14 to U4 to U18. But a high school coach once told me if you're at the end of practice and there's one person that's left, if that athlete is over 18 years old and they're waiting for their parents to show up, you do not have to wait with them, which seems strange to me, like have two people wait with them. So I wondered if there was an age limit where the rule of two does not apply. Let's say you're coaching adults and, right, it's time to leave, somebody's missing a ride. Surely you don't wait for, that person's spouse to show up to take you home. So I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
So one, I encourage sports to think of that what if scenario. So that definitely is one thing for sure. And I encourage them to look at having a policy in place for something. So, for example, if I'm looking at how recreational programs work, they stay on site up until, the parent shows up, and they stay buddy system. And so if let's say two groups are done. One notices that, one coach is alone with one participant or will be alone with one participant. They stick around. It's part of their onboard training. It's part of their policies that they stick together and then they have a plan for that. And they also inform the club that, hey, we're staying behind a little bit more because Johnny's mom is away and waiting. So one, I encourage clubs to have their own policies on that, to think it through and see what are the scenarios. And there's different scenarios, right? And so life happens. And so whether it's possible for somebody to be there, yes, fantastic. But if not, then what are your other options? And it should be one-off. It's not something that should happen every week. If it is something that happens every week, then it's something that needs to be addressed. So those are things that kind of we're looking at. And your question was pretty good in terms of if it's an 18-year-old or if it's an adult. So power imbalance does exist, whether it's I'm an adult and you're my coach, whether I'm a child and your coach. And so there's different things. But yes, you're right, duty of care, right? It's like I won't leave a 12-year-old alone there while I leave after the end of the day. And so there has to be something. And then something to be said as well for the communication. So is there direct contact with the parent? So do you know for sure the parent is coming? Do you have access to those calls? Have you made those calls? Are you tracking how you're communicating with them? So those are all also things that you're kind of looking at is, if there's direct contact there. And then the other part that I've heard on this is, well, can I not just drop off the kid at home? Like it's on my route home, so I can definitely do that, right? And so it's again, you're adding risk. You're adding risk to yourself as a coach, you're adding risk to your club, and you're adding risk to the child if you're doing it. And so it doesn't mean that it's not done, but it just means how can you do it safely? And do you do it? And so how often do you do it, right? And so if it's an every week thing, then some other problem solving needs to happen. And so I've heard of some buddy up system. I've heard of it was an emergency, and then yes, we drove them home, but they were on the call with mom the whole time. Mom was aware, and the child was behind the seat, and so they were not side by side, right? Child was also aware of what the rule of two is. They understood it. They knew why all this was happening, and so that, and the club was informed. And so it's all those safety measures that if you're putting it in place, then you're adding your security to overall to help on that side. So I hope that helps. I know it's a long answer, but I know there was different parts to that answer as well. So hopefully that helps on that side. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm seeing anything else in the chat. Is there any other questions or comments on the responsible coaching movement?
I think we
Hi
have,
there. I asked a question in the chat about driving athletes. So if the rule of two is maintained in a car, like two coaches, can two coaches drive one or two or three athletes to a practice? For example, maybe you're at a training camp, like you're at a, yeah, you're together as a group for a number of weeks or for a week. Um, can it be part of the plan for that, for those
What is
coaches
your
to
thoughts
drive
on that?
athletes?
What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I've heard so if the rule of two is maintained, then that's great. But I've also heard things about like you need a certain level of insurance in order to be covered in the event of an accident. So I'm looking for more guidance on that. I used the link you provided, but I didn't see anything about that in particular.
So insurance in terms of driving with athletes and with members of the club is a completely different story. So that's not relevant to Rule 2, but you're right. There are some things there that need to be done. And so that's part of your club liability that you would need to look at and seeing, do they cover your members or your staff to drive participants around. So that's something for sure that will be needed. And then will they need or not need the driver's record? Also, that I've also heard for some. So again, different provinces work differently. So that's something, and different insurances ask for more information as well. So yeah, so for example, in my past years when I was working with the military and we were running some programs, and if I wanted to be able to drive a participant around, I needed a minimum of 2 million liability, and they needed a copy of my driving record. I needed to prove that, it's clean slate, etc., and the vulnerable sector check. And so there's all those requirements that will need to be addressed with your club insurance directly. Same as, can they use their own vehicle, or does it have to be a rental vehicle? Because that's also coming to play. So that's a whole insurance question that you'll need to look at. On the rule of two, so whether you can abide to or not, the thing that I would say is, one, what is the club want on that? So if the club is saying it's on training camps because we're all away somewhere, so it's close to home, and so we're all traveling together to this place, and we're always together in terms of in the car, and that respects the rule of two, the club is informed, the parents are informed, the kids are informed of that. This is the way that we navigate from one to the next. Then that's up to you to decide that. If it's for example, I've had some questions on this participant races at this time, but these participants race at that time, and so we need to separate how we're traveling together. Again, the rule of two. So look at how you can respect it, because the times where you're making it more normal for this to happen regularly, it normalizes it, and so that kind of shifts away from the rule of two. And then the second one is when you're not abiding by screened and trained, and the safety in numbers, and you're also adding some risk. And so how much risk are you willing to have and want for what the outcome that you're looking at is a club, and something that you'll have to look at. I know it's not a full, complete answer of yes or no, because I can't say it. It's your sport. It's the way that you navigate it and you put your policies in place. But just take a look in terms of how you're doing it. And if you look into the UCCMS, there is parts of it where they are strongly encouraging no one-on-one. And so it is something that, we're looking at code of conduct wise. And again, trying to create an environment where abuse can't happen, because it's just that there's no options of it happening.
Okay, thank
Sorry, I
you.
gotta take something. And I'm happy to chat on offline too. So if you want to hash out some of the soundboarding and some things, I'm happy to do that as well. All right, so I'm seeing another question here on reporting. Is that correct, Francis? Okay. So what are the steps for reporting problems in Quebec? If the club refuses to acknowledge the issue, and provincial organization and PILS, which I'm not sure, are not responding either. So reporting is a whole different beast on itself. And it really depends on whether you are a local, provincial, and or national sport organization, to be honest, in terms of where you at, of what your reporting options are. And protecteur en intégrité de loisirs et de sport. Okay, c'est bon, merci. And so depends on the level of sport that you're at. Also look at your club policies. So this is where another part of what, and we're not touching much on this here today, but you need a complaint process. So where there's a policy that needs to be in place, a way of how you're doing it and how you're managing it. And so that's another part that, we're seeing on our side that's missing for the lower tier, so the level of recreation, but also of local sport that don't have. Provincial, they're implementing that. National, they do have it, but on the lower side, it's not necessarily fully in place, and it's kind of left on your own. So for that one, let's chat offline, and we can talk on that one, because Quebec has their own different system on how they manage this. And there is services that you can access to help and support on that side. So that's where I would redirect you on that one. C'est bon. Okay, so I'm not seeing any other questions. I just have a few more slides before we come into a little bit more scenarios that I wanted to kind of check in on that one. Thank you. So in terms of a club itself, so yes, a framework would be your first step. Sorry, the first step would be an audit. So audit your organization, check your quick wins. What is it that you're really doing? What are the things or holes that are missing? What can you put in place, and what's needed? So that's definitely your first step, is doing that audit. And then the second one would be, yes, responsible coaching movement. So if you're not a champion, then I encourage you to align with that. I encourage you to look at the 3 pillars and how you can implement it and put in your engagement. So that's a loud voice that says, I'm here, I'm noticing some safe sport things. As an organization, I'm making steps, or I'm taking things in my hand and making things priority. So we encourage you to say that you are a responsible coaching champion, to show the things that you're asking, because I know as a parent of two, when I've put my kids and I start asking questions, and I get it. This is my work, right? And I know this a little bit more than your regular parent, but they get defensive when I start asking questions. So a classic example is a swim club that my daughter joined, and I started asking her where their policies. They weren't too comfortable with having to answer that. So I'm not asking you to be able to nitpick on your policies. I just want to know how the club runs. What is your culture? What are the things function and going through? And so, for example, I should be able to go on your website or Facebook group or wherever you have and be able to look up your policies. They should be well documented, well updated, and being able available to all. And so that's part of your audit that I'm encouraging you to see. How do you function? How do you share these to your people? And if you have new members coming in, how do you orient them to how you function as a club? And so that's the first main two pieces. And then the next one is your governance. So how is your leadership going into managing your club itself? And I come from a very rural area. And so I know for me in the area where we're at, the person's been the chair, and then it was before that it was their own father, and then before their father was a grandfather, and so and I'm not joking with meaning it's a family sport, and they're all involved. There's nothing bad with that. What I suggest in looking at is what are the roles of the people that are on that board, and so if I am the chair of that board of, let's say, my local skating club, but I'm also a coach of my local skating club, and I'm also a parent of a local skating club, then I've got all these different hats that may muddle some of my thinking and some of my governance of the club itself. And so how can you reduce the risk of having some situations there? And how can you make it better for the all? And so this is one resource here, and this is um, sport information research council. Sorry, I always know by circuit, so that the acronyms are bad for that one, but they are great in being a hub for a lot of the resources that you're looking for. And so this is where I want to show you where it's not just one organization that has here. They have different publications. So from blogs to templates to best practices on what you can do for governance and how they're doing it. And it goes back to our conversations on when I was talking about the background screening, is I need to know what my role is. So it's me as a chair, then it's me as a chair. I should have an overview of the club. I'm not doing the daily nitty-gritty some of the items, right? And so those are the things that we're looking at. And the responsibility that the board has, or the chair has, or president, or however you set up your system, needs to be clear in terms of, that they run the overall part of it in terms of the high level. And so those are things that we're kind of looking at and affects the sports system. And so if we have some work to do on the local level, this is where I can say that, a little bit more training, a little bit more awareness of what a board is, how we function, how we communicate. And like I said, there's resources out there to help you with that. There's even recent webinars that you can kind of look at and just to have a help on that and seeing more on this. But when we're looking at past situations, for example, if a local club contacts me and they're having a situation of abuse and treatment, let's say from a coach to an athlete, well, the first thing that the investigators are going to look at is how is your club running? So what is your communication? What is your policies? How did you orient those coaches? What communication did you have back and forth? Similar to how you do it as an office setting, right? Or in a workplace setting. So there must be some sort of interactions where I'm able to say, hey, this is not acceptable where we're at, having some training conversations back and forth, reflections. We move forward on what our learnings were, and then we change that behavior, right? And so we're looking at some of those things, but then there's the disciplines that needs to happen if those things are not in place. And then how are you doing that? How are you documenting that? Those are things that comes back in investigation. And this is where we've heard and seen some of the clubs where they hurt, where they're having a hard time having to answer that. And at the same time, a lot of times crumbles that club because they spent all their resources in trying to, work with that investigation, and that complaint and then having some challenges. And so again, we're limiting risk by having a better system. So it also goes to the governance and that framework that I talked about there, CM before the hand. And moving on to the next one. And then the other thing that I wanted to show you is the Sport Dispute Resolution Center. Here, they created a lot of policy templates. So recognizing that a lot of you in the local support system, you don't have the nice big budget to go and hire a lawyer change all your policies and align with everything, right? And so this group here, they've done that work. And so there's policies that you can take that you can adapt to what you need and bring it forward. And so if you have an option and it's recommended, but also this can also help you on that side as well. But if you have an option of seeking legal support once you've adapted your policies and you're looking at and have them review and confirm that that's what fits for your sport club, then definitely encourage. But again, looking at how you can align yourself to have some strong policies to help protect you as well, but also strong guidelines and clarifications on everybody's role within the sport club organization that you are in, helps you reduce that risk, helps implement that, and creates an environment that's limiting of the risk is what we're looking at. The other thing I'm going to mention about here as well. So remember earlier when we talked about the UCCMS and I'm encouraging you to align to it. It also means that you don't need to change all of your policies to align with UCCMS. In here, they have that template that says it's a policy that you come in and you can have everybody sign and read through the UCCMS to say that yes, we abide by this code of conduct, and yes, our agency will take this as our mean of going forward. And so again, there's lots of tools out there that you can use instead of having to duplicate, adjust it to what you need for your club and going forward. So overall, what I'm suggesting is audit your organization. So take a look and just look and see your structure, your governance structure. So is it strong? So do you know what a strong governance structure looks like? So maybe you do need to look at some research there. Look at your policies. What policies do you have? When was the last time that you had them updated, reviewed, and double checked? Do you know the UCCMS? Have you a clear understanding of how to use it? Do you align your club or your practices to it? And so those are things that, again, we're looking at having. And then setting up a plan of action. And so this is the type of work that we do that we encourage you to have regularly. So maybe if you're doing this for the first time, maybe review it in 6 months to see, what have you moved and in the next 6 months. And then after that, maybe it can be yearly. So, right. So I audit, I check what it needs to be. I see the holes where I need to plug some things. I do the work in investigating, adding some things forward. I help with my members to get on board on that side, and then I move forward on implementation. So definitely those things that we're looking at. Yeah, no, you can go up to the next one. Yeah, next slide. And so when we come back to safe sport or sports safety or integrity in sport, however you want to call it, it's everybody's role. So we all have a role to play into it. We all need to be knowledgeable into it. And so I recommend you to add this into your orientation meetings, have some orientation meetings with your group. And so definitely encourage you to have that. And um, the more we know, the more we can change it, right? And so how we ran clubs 20 years ago, 30 years ago, to even 5 years ago is a bit different. And so we're looking at making it better because we know better, but we also have seen the examples of when it did not go well, and that's why we're trying to changing it. And so again, going back to our main goal here is to have people love sport, be active in sport and involved, and we're looking for the continuation of that for sure. So I'll move on to the next one if you don't want. So yeah, so there's a quick survey, just knowing things that you enjoyed and not enjoyed, but this is also the part where I'm looking at having more discussions. So if you have questions or if you have scenarios in place or I don't know, something else maybe that I forgot to introduce here, because it could be some other tools that maybe that I'm not aware of or that I forgot that you want to share on how we can take steps to implementing safe sport in our sports environment, that would be great. So whether you want to come off mute, and I would say just maybe raise your hand so that we can being able to follow some sort of an order or putting it in the chat as well. And Francis and Mikey are there to help out to triage that as well. Yeah, center. Thank you, Natalie. That's the C that was missing. So the Sport Information Research Center. Thank you. Is there anything here that you want me to touch on again? Go ahead, David.
Can you expand on maybe the audit? Who would we get to do an audit? Is that would be somebody from our own board of directors would be doing an audit, or are there organizations that do audits for reasonable cost or for a high cost? Like maybe you can just touch on the audit thing.
Yeah. So there's a few ways that you can do this. So yes, there are definitely some businesses that work in safe sport that can come into your organization and kind of review everything. So to a cost and to a price, yes, they can come in and do an audit on everything and help you with things that you can go through for sure. There is a cost attached to that one. The other part is just you as a group. And so I do suggest that it is aligned with the board or the president or the leadership part of it that they're looking at, and it's a club level, so it's not me as a coach. Yes, as a coach, I can do it and then see where they're at, but it's also me presenting it to the leadership of that club and getting their support because at the end of the day, you want that full support of the club and you're able to move in the direction where everybody is going through. And at times, I've seen they need more information. They need to understand why we're doing this. And so this is where the steps to move forward maybe take a little bit longer because they need to have like maybe an overview like this to understand it first, right? And then they get their to comprehend a little bit more on some of the options there and then try to together see on that. And so maybe it's a subcommittee of your club that decides together this is what we're going to be doing. And so I've given different options of how you can do it because not everybody has the funds to be able to go out and hire somebody to do an audit. And so we're trying to give you some tools that internally you can do. And especially for those clubs that it is only like a small handful of leadership there, that, it's something that's manageable that you can take some steps on.
I can't seem to find my hand. I don't know.
It's all good.
Sorry. I was just gonna say too, so, in terms of looking at, the Ottawa Sport Council's role in community sport, that grassroots community level, and that's a role that we can play. Not that we're an auditor or an expert, but we are invested in ensuring community sport, safe sport, sport safety, integrity, and all of those aspects of sport. And so for organizations, we look at how can we help and support, without, necessarily being that official auditor. However, we can provide more of an overview. One thing that we've been looking at, and especially since the Future of Sport Commission report came out, was opportunities. And this is something where, for example, I'll use tennis. There's 25 community tennis clubs in the city. And to have, when we look at funding for these types of audits and looking at sport safety, it's like to come together as a whole sport, still looking at applying things at club level, your specific club, but to have all of the tennis clubs come together, pull resources from each club to then have a broader look at what policies and procedures and tools should be implemented at any tennis club, and then have the foundation built to then break it out into your specific club is one way we're looking at how to do that. But at any point, if you need any help or guidance in terms of that governance, we actually have two governance experts on our board at the Ottawa Sport Council because we very much believe, and just as Francis was saying about how important that governance structure is in community sport, and how the role of the board and everything is really a key part that can't be forgotten. And so reach out and we can continue conversations around that.
Awesome. Thank you, Francis. And so those are for those that are in the Ottawa area, I can say, right? Ottawa area. And so, and even if you're not, like, even if you reach out to either Francis is here, so whether it's Francis Mercer or myself here, we'll help in terms of redirect you in terms of how we can support you on that side. The other
And
thing that I wanted to mention is, You can also reach out to your provincial sport and your national sport organizations. So, for example, when somebody reaches out to me with a situation, that's the first thing I do is I go on their website. So, if I can't find it in a local club, then I also look on the provincial club, and then I look on the national sport club. They've done this work, so they have the majority of them updated police policies and procedures in terms of going forward. And so I go on the website, I check out the policies, and then that's something that you could look as a club to kind of reuse. And so it's a quick reach out to that provincial sport organization to say, hey, I'm looking for a policy, let's say on traveling with athletes or locker room. I see you have one there. Can I just get the a nibble version that I kind of do with this as well, right? And so those are things that you can definitely have the conversations, recognizing that if you are in full season mode, that the response may be slow. So just recognizing like the capacity of each one, but it is conversations that I've seen happen quite well between provincial and national sport organizations where they're willing to help. Don't be afraid to ask and use some of the things that they have as well. Is there anything else?
I just had one quick thought, and maybe it's a further conversation, but something that I know we hear a lot from the community sports sector is how to educate parents and their role. And so, looking ahead and hoping that Ottawa Sport Council will have a role in that. Are a lot of these different, like the ethics training, the rule of two and the screening, uh, but more from like even if a parent isn't volunteering or part of the organization, how to educate the parent about, like you were saying, like asking the organization about their policies. And do you know if there's anything in the works in whatever level of support for educating the parents more on what this all means?
So it's a great question. And it's a question that's hard to answer because of how our support system is set up. And so, for example, if I'm looking at my mandate in terms of Coaching Association of Canada, I'm there for mainly the coaches. So that's why the funding that we're getting for and going through this program, because we're ambassadors and we help create it, and we're kind of pushing on that side. This mandate is for everybody. So through this program, I'm able to do presentations like this. I'm able to share some of the resources we have, build some more things that are out there as well. But in terms of creating things that are for parents only, those are things that, it's a little bit challenging for us to do in terms of within our own mandate. And then there's other organizations that are doing something similar. So if I'm looking at Alison Forsyth, she does have a safe sport training for parents that she created that's available online. And so there's lots of different pockets of things happening together, but there is no not accumulation, not co like there's not one hub where all of this is available, right? It's all in different pockets, and that's the main challenge of our sports system. The one thing that I have been recommending and going through is one of your tools. So you have this tool called Belonging and Playbook. And so in there, and being inclusive, you talk about having some orientation meetings, mid-session meeting, mid-season meetings, and also end of season meetings. And so I'll give you the example. So I'm a person in sport who has been an athlete, has been a coach, has been an administrator, have done a lot of things. But when it came about me being as a parent of my kids and coming to the local clubs, I find it hard to navigate how things are functioning now compared to what I'm used to and what I know, right? And so the example of a swim team that I mentioned earlier, it's a real one. And so where I came into the club, completely brand new to how this works, even if I was a swimmer in a swim club, different location, different area, different era, in terms of doing this as well. And so what the coach expects of them, those are questions that I had. So what is my role here coming in? And so for me, what I saw was missing is that orientation. So I'm a new parent coming into your club. Tell me what's good. Like, tell me what's need to be expected. So if I take another example, hockey. So my son's been playing in hockey. This past year was a little bit better flow on as a parent. There's some fundraising that you need to be doing this. There's this training that you need to be going about is this. There's making sure that your child does not have cell phone in the locker, making sure that we're there and are so all the things that was expected on my son, and in terms of us as a parent, was laid out right in front when we registered. So this is how our club functions. This is what we want. This is what's coming forward. It makes it clear for me. And even the coach went ahead and said, I'm good to having conversations with you, our parents, one-on-one anytime. I'm asking two things. One, 24-hour rule. Something happens that you're not agreeing about with or that you don't like, give me 24 hours. Go sleep on it, go do something, and then reach out to me and we can connect. Second one, he says, I'm available between this time and this time. Most of these people, and especially for clubs, we're running as a volunteer, right? And so this is not my full-time job. So when I'm doing groceries, that is not the time to come in to see me and say, hey, I want to talk about your son and something that's happening at hockey. And so, having those conversations and giving those boundaries, those are the things that clubs can encourage all of their members to have and to do. So that's that orientation. It's knowing what's expected. And so as a parent, I need to know what's expected of me. What am I doing? Yes, I'm paying out for this, and yes, I'm giving the rides, but what else is there? And so that communication, that flow, like those are things that, that I encourage. And that's why I also say mid-season, because yeah, you can get at the beginning of the season, but now you're in your mid-season. Now you're starting to get the grasp of what things are around, right? And you have some questions on, or you're helping decide on where you want your season. And at the end of it, I encourage clubs to take that as a reflection tool. So what are things that went well? What are things that went great? What are things that, hey, yeah, we need to adjust on this? And maybe some parents have some willingness to come in and help out, right? And so that's where, for me, like this is what I encourage. So that in the belonging playbook, and I encourage you to add that to the email that the links that I shared that they can share with everybody as well. But you have a great video there, and you have a great list on what should be included in a parent meeting. And I think those are things that are valid and doable. And I also encourage you to do it virtually. So, because I can tell you that when season starts, it starts for everybody all at the same time. And so, for me to go and do this and school and everything else, so maybe it's a virtual check-in with parents, right? Then you're able to share some of the information. But again, parents are your supporters on there. They're your allies. Use them, give them information, help them out, and use that communication. So I think that definitely is a great way of doing it.
Thanks. That's really great.
I'm seeing another comment here. Precautions. So supplement. It's in the French because I'm translating in English. So supplementary precautions or legal obligations in the case of minor coaches and minor athletes. So on the coaching side, I can say that everything that we have is set up for ages 14 and up. And even between 14 and 16, we do encourage parents to be involved. And so whatever NCCP training that you're taking, we encourage you to have those conversations and help them out understand what they're going through and what their expectations. And so you're correct. Like when you're having a minor coach teaching minor athletes, a little bit touchy, but at the same time, that's where your code of conduct comes into place. Get them to know the UCCMS. This is what I'm expecting of you. So you as an athlete coach, excuse me, when do you come in before practice? So how much ahead of time are you giving practices? How are you doing your communication? What am I control of? Am I only control of how I'm setting up my environment for my practice, or do I need to give you a plan before I come into practice? Do I communicate to coach directly, or maybe it's somebody else, the superior coach that communicates for the athlete? So I think those roles can help you on that side and being able to help. And then on the athlete side, have them have a voice. So if there's any type of surveys or apps that you can use so that they can give, some impressions of how that works, that would be fantastic. And so I know of some clubs, and again, local clubs, national team does it as well, but where after each practice, and for them, sorry, one club was after each practice, one club was a weekly. And so it's the three questions of this is what I liked. This was, and again, short answers where there was a smiley face that you were able to do in terms of how their body felt, what they practiced, what they liked, and then something that they wanted to share. And so it just gave them an option of doing and saying something. And so again, I think for your younger coaches and your younger athletes, I think the structure is what's needed there for sure. And I think clarity on rules and how they can happen. And then be clear on if this is not what I see, what will happen. And so that those again goes back to that code of conduct that this is like a job. This is what you're doing in terms of going forward. These are the ethics of the behavior that I'm asking you to. And then this what happens when it does not. All right. I'm looking at another comment here. And we have another 10 minutes or so for other questions or discussions if you have any there. I hope this is helpful. I hope this helps you see the steps that you can take as well. So the comment here, so everybody can see that. Yeah, perfect. Coaching, pedagogy, and teaching. We embed many of the principles in the curriculum and the free resource of the Locker website. Incredibly valuable. Yeah, it allows younger teachers and coaches to enroll in programs and increases awareness in programs. Agreed. And that's why we try to give as much as we can for free. So again, there's capacity there, so we can't do everything, but we try as much as possible to reach the more people as possible to give them free resources that you can use for sure. And then if you're seeing something that's missing, don't be shy and name it and call it out. And so if it's something that is in our area that I can maybe look at, I will definitely see how I can maybe see if I can find the funds or find a way of creating it or look elsewhere in the sports system that it's creating it for sure. Okay, I'm seeing a question for the rule of two. So if you can't have two adults that are screened with one participant, so let's say it's three participants and one adult, can that be okay? So can be okay, yeah. How often does it happen? So, and what is your policy? So do you, as a organization, want to make sure that at I'm going to take percentages out, but like let's say 95% of the time that you're always with a few adults and kids at all times. It's the few times where you're separating to bathroom breaks, for example. I'm guiding three athletes to the washroom. I'm staying outside in the hallway. You know that there's those numbers. So again, it all depends on your sport and your environment because again, not all nice facilities have a way of being able all together at all times. And so just looking in terms of what can you do to limit the risk is the biggest question there. And then so how can you problem solve that? And that really is what it is. It's looking at those what if scenarios and then working up from on that side. So I hope that answers your question, Chris. So it's not ideal to be not screened, not trained adults with the kids, but yes, it does respect the rule of two, and it is something that, you know, if it's once in a while and not a regular thing, then your risk is limited. But again, as an organization, you should be looking at that of what is acceptable to you. Any other questions or comments? I think I've heard somebody come off mute. Wait.
Yeah, Francis, thank you for everything. And you mentioned making some of this stuff free. And I got to tell you, my teenage daughter has done every one of those free modules that she can. And any money that she makes, she pays for your courses. Even though
Oh,
I said,
that's
like,
awesome.
girl, we'll pay for them. She's like, no, I want to pay for them. So she's got this whole list of them in the locker that she's taken. So thank you and your organization for that. Don't think that teenagers don't look at them because they do. So I had the question, we are the ones in Quebec and we are the ones that are fighting it's our local club. The problem is that they refused to provide us any document. Their website had nothing about code of conduct or like anything. There was no documentation. And all of a sudden, one day, we just got an email, your daughter's off the club for malalignment with the club policies. Like there was no warnings, no nothing like that. It's bye bye, she's off the club. So I won't go into too many details, but we reached out to the club. Nothing, no luck. We asked for the bylaws, we asked everything, couldn't get anything. And I've been asking for about 2 years for that documentation, and they would never give us anything. I reached out to the provincial organization. they're not helping us. And of course, because in Quebec, the national organization sent us back to the provincial organization. So that's when I reached out to PILS, the integrity commissioner. And I did that back in December, and I'm not hearing anything. So what do I do now, given that we're in Quebec?
So there's a few organizations that can take your complaint on the Quebec side that can help you with that. And so um, one that I can come off top of my head, and I'll need to do a little bit more research, but Sportide is one of them. And so it sounds
They just sent us to PILS.
okay. Okay. When was the last time you spoke to Sportide?
Mm,
So we can
maybe
take this
January.
offline. We can take this offline, but you're naming a case where documentation makes a difference. So one, you need
You're
to be clear.
right.
You need to have the outcome. So it sounds like it's either a selection process or a participation process. I'm not sure which one is which. And so clear on the date, time, what happened, how, where, name of the club, and all those things are very good to have, right? And
Hmm.
then having documentation of when you're asking them. So what are you
Hmm.
asking? Who did you ask? What time it was? How much time has run since we have not had any communication, follow up on that case. And so it does sound like it's a lot of tracking on that side. And then the outcome. So what would be the main outcome? So are you looking to learn more of why and how, and so to make sure that it doesn't happen again? Are you looking for remediation? Like, so those are things that, when we're having reports back or concerns brought forward, those are things that we kind of talk through in terms of what's your goal on this, because it again depends on the severity, depends if there was abuse or not abuse, depends on a lot of different scenarios. So here on this case, and Quebec is the one that functions a bit differently, just across from all the provinces and territories. So they do have different services there. So that's why I say if we take this online, I can help you in terms of see how we can contact this and maybe move some things ahead. And the unfortunate part is the admin part of having to go back over and over again up until like either you drop it or you go to the legal side and look at having some support. And so again, it's the sports system is challenging on that end. The other question that I also have on this case is, have you reached out to the provincial sport? Have you reached out to the national sport? So you have a
Oh yeah, and
person.
I've reached out provincial, they're ignoring us, and it's going against the provincial bylaws, right? Like if you've got if an athlete is creating an issue with the club, right? You typically go through a verbal warning, a written warning, and then, and so on, right? None of that ever happened. None of that ever happened. So now we've got an issue with the provincial organization because they approved what the club did. So the provincial organization went against their own bylaws. So now, and the national organization won't do anything because it's Quebec. So we're really like in this in-between spot of nobody wants to touch this.
All right, so I'm putting my email in the chat, and it's open for anybody. So if you have any
Okay.
questions or scenarios that you want to connect on, we can definitely do that. It is a unique scenario that what you're naming there, and I don't have like a full answer yet, but I
Okay.
can definitely help you problem solve and see how we can do it on that side.
Okay.
Thank you for reaching out though, Louise. I appreciate you
Yeah.
joining the call, and I appreciate you just naming that out. And I definitely hear the frustration of navigating the system. And unfortunately, it's something that we've heard a little bit too much. And so that's
Yeah.
why the Sport Commission came out with that recommendations, right? And so we're working in each our own way to try to change the sport. So no, thank you very much for that.
And
All right,
thank
so
you
I'm seeing the
for,
time. Yeah, definitely
thanks
here to
for,
hear you. All right, so I'm seeing the time. I think we can close it here. So again, the PowerPoint and the links will be shared. You've got my email address, and so if there's something that you want to connect with and you want some more clarifications, definitely here for that. And I can't. We all have a role to play. We all have a place of pieces that you can do, and it's ongoing. So it's not a one done check box and gone through. So and there's a lot of things that are out there in the system that you can use. And so do your audit, check what you have. You are already doing some great things there. So what are things that you can add on to it? And then look at your communication, and then seeing how you can do this regularly is definitely some of those things as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the things, the knowledge that I have here. it's ongoing, and so we'll continue to make these supports. And if you do become a responsible coaching champion, those are things that we do as well. So on our side, in terms of CUC, I do create different learning opportunities for as well to go in depth on some of these topics, and same with some newsletters. And so definitely here to support you. And thank you for taking the time. Thank you for being true and then calling out some of the things. And I appreciate what you brought in today for this webinar.
Thank you so much for educating us and bringing all this to us today. So it's very, very valuable, and just having us all together. And yeah, look forward to keep going. Thank you everybody for attending, and yeah, you will receive from me by tomorrow the summary of this webinar and the details and how to contact both Francises, and yeah, and we'll definitely touch base. Thank you so much.
Merci, bonne journée.